you so much for coming out this morning. I'm really excited to be moderating this panel. My name is Malika Mitra. I'm a reporter at Money. I cover investing. And yeah, I'm really excited to be up here with our panelists. We have Penny Phillips. Penny is co-founder and president of Journey Strategic Wealth, an IRA aggregator built for advisory teams looking to outsource management and outsource operations and practice management. We also have Jason Wenk, CEO and founder of Altruist, which is a custodian that's using technology to make financial advice better, more accessible, and more affordable. And then we also have here Dave Welling. Dave is CEO of Mercer Advisors, an independent RIA firm that serves over 25,000 clients and provides comprehensive financial planning, investment management, estate planning, and more. So we're really excited to be up here and talk to you all about the future of financial advice and what it takes for everyone to stay relevant in an industry that we know has changed a lot recently and is still changing. So thank you to all of you for being here. I want to kick it off with a question pretty broad, just about how technology has obviously come forward and really changed this industry, and the role of the financial advisor has changed, or at least the way that we talk about the financial advisor has changed. What is the main thing that you think advisors need to keep in mind to have their businesses keep pace with the changing industry? Penny, do you want to start?
Sure, I will. First of all, it's wonderful to be here. This is very cool. Yeah, I hear birds chirping very loud, something I've never heard while on stage at a conference. So hopefully you all can hear me. My answer, it's sort of ironic because we're talking a lot about technology and AI and advancements in the digital landscape. But my answer to that question is advisors need to be mindful of the consumer and the client and the changing preferences and needs of the client always. Regardless of what advancements take place in our industry, the reality is we say we're in financial services, but we are in the business of helping people solve problems, and we happen to deliver financial services and wealth management services to do that. So what I always tell advisors is, regardless of what's going on around you in the industry, regardless of what's happening in fintech, if you're ever thinking about the next decision you should make about the business or what technology you should integrate or what you should be mindful of, always bring it back to the questions the client, your ideal client, is likely asking themselves. So especially as you enter into Q4 and you're thinking about business planning and you're thinking about this conference, hopefully, ask yourself, what are the questions that I need to help clients solve for? What are the ways in which the client or consumer consumes goods and services? How might that inform the way in which I deliver my services to the client? So it's a long way of saying my answer is advisors need to be mindful always of the client they are serving.
Jason, what about you?
Well said, and 100% agree that it should be always client-centric. I guess, like as a slightly different take, I think that a lot of advisors have a bit of like shiny object syndrome as it relates to technology. So I know the question was like, how is technology changing advice? I'd say, advisors are changing how they deliver advice, but I think technology still kind of like makes it murky and muddy. And it's unfortunate that that it gets used, I think, in many ways as like a crutch of sorts. When really, I think less is probably more. So the less you can use, probably the better, and the lower cost, probably the better. And from a client experience, the less logins, the better, right? So almost always less is going to be more because those things will actually add up to a better experience for the client. So that's kind of how I view it.
Dave, what about you?
So I'm part of Mercer Advisors now, but I also have experience running wealth technology business for about 8 years. And we had a phrase in that experience in reference to the engineers, that engineers are problem solvers, but you have to point them to the problems that are worth solving and that are meaningful. Otherwise, if it's just a technology trying to find an application, that usually doesn't work, right? So when you think about this industry, and I've been part of this industry for 25 years, I think, first of all, we're in a golden age of financial advice, particularly fiduciary-based advice that's aligned around the client's interest, as Penny started us off. But I think the role of the advisor as it evolves just becomes more human. Right? They become more connected with the client, and I think not less technical, but maybe relying on other technical people or applications or technology behind the scenes to do work that typically had been in the hands of the advisors. There's great industry studies that even today, in a financial planning firm, the advisor only spends about 17% of their time with clients. And I think that's shocking. I think you need to evaluate that and think about how you can have that advisor, that more human advisor, be more front stage, and then to be able to rely on support system behind them, whether that's technology or other technical specialists to complement what they do. And I think it's different. That's different than how the industry has been, different than even where we are today.
Got it. That's really helpful. And also, we want to make this as helpful to you all as possible. So please keep in mind that you can put any questions that you have in Slido via the app, and I'll kind of integrate those throughout the conversation as well. Technology came up a lot, obviously. I'm wondering, Dave and Penny, this might be specific to you two. Where are you investing in technology in your business, and how are you seeing it enhance your business? Penny, do you want to start?
Sure. A lovely plane flying by, along with the birds.
If that was a technology banner, that would be
technology,
really appropriate.
Yes.
Damn it, it's Meb Faber.
So when we think about investing in technology, Journey Strategic Wealth, my company is an RIA. We're set up as an aggregator or integrator, if you will. And I'm happy you shared that stat, Dave, because our mission is for advisors to spend 80% or more of their time a week working with clients or engaging with prospects in some meaningful way. So for us, when we're investing in technology, it's all about two objectives. Number one, it's helping advisors go deeper down the value chain. So integrating tools like, let's say, Holistiplan or FP Alpha to help advisors really deliver holistic wealth management services. The other objective for us is simply creating capacity and time for advisors. So what does that mean? That means advisors, in my opinion, should not be doing anything operational. They should not be doing anything related to inputting data into systems or planning tools. All of that stuff, that administrative and operational stuff that ultimately leads to revenue producing activities, but in and of itself aren't revenue producing activities. We want to take that away from the advisor. And so where we will be making investments now, and advisors in the room can attest to this, we've got great tech tools in our business, but integrations don't always mean integrations. And tools, if we have too many of them sometimes, it actually does the reverse, and we end up spending too much time trying to figure out how they work. So for us, it's going to be about building a data warehouse. It's going to be about really making investments behind the tech to make it work better and more efficiently for us as a home office and for the advisors.
Dave, what's your thoughts?
So Penny touched on advisor productivity. So back to that 17% that I talked about. We'd like that in our firm to be 70%, right? With the balance of 30% or so being spent on advancing their capabilities, education, and maybe taking the advice the final mile, like the last bit, to be able to really customize it and tailor it to the client. So Mercer's context is a little bit different than others. We're 40 billion, we have 25,000 clients, we have 800 employees, with about 600 of those folks really front stage in some client-facing advisory capacity. But we've become very specialized, right? So I think maybe we'll come back to the point of service expansion and what does the advisor do beyond investments. We have an estate planning team, we have a tax team, we have an insurance team, we have a trust team, we have a central financial planning group. So our investment in technology is in two places. One, to keep that advisor and those local teams as front stage with clients as much as possible and pulling it back, but we also have all these specialized teams. So massive investment in technology to make sure that we're all connected and communicating with each other. So use of Salesforce Financial Services Cloud, not just as a CRM system, as a workflow engine. So the advisor can delegate a task to somebody who's a specialist to be able to do the technical work, but they can see where that is every step along the way, which is really, in our context, really critical for us. And that construct, I think, is, if it's on a smaller scale, is something that other advisors can learn from about how that advisor evaluates, how do I get rid of the operational tasks? Because usually advisors hold on to those things because they want to make sure it gets done, right? And so the best way to make sure it gets done the way I want is to do it myself, but it can become really limiting for that advisor to be able to serve more clients or go out and win new business. So you have to use technology to create that fabric of trust in the organization to make sure things aren't going to drop.
Okay, great. And we will get back to the service expansion like you mentioned. Jason, I think you might have a bit of a different perspective based on your business, but what is your take on where financial advisors should be innovating in tech?
Yeah, I think Will Ferrell said, when you say with all due respect, right, you can say whatever you want, right? But so with all due respect, no. So I think I 100% agree. Like advisors should spend more time advising and less time doing other stuff. But I think like transferring the work from one human to another human is not like what I'd call highly efficient. And paying for lots of really expensive software is also not highly efficient. So I think that to me, like real innovation is when you can codify out the things that nobody should be doing. And there's still a long ways to go. I think like when we think of financial technology. There's a venture investor who was one of the very early venture investors, Matt Harris from Bain, and he has this philosophy that like there's 3 phases of innovation. He's like the first one is simply just digitizing like what people used to do manually, and we're still not even there yet in this industry, right? So like the next phase, in his view, is when you have embedded technology or like this sort of like answer to these integration woes, but that's mostly through vertical integration, not like I'm going to build a tech stack of 8 different things and kind of hope they work together. And then the third is actually when it becomes almost like Web 3, in terms of like the way that consumers are actually driving the vast majority, and advisors are simply advising. But like from a technology perspective, like there's actually almost no involvement. There's no back office to outsource to, right? Because we've codified it, then we've literally gotten rid of it, right? And we've like kind of just connected the 2 different humans without a lot of middleware and middle office. So I think that we unfortunately in our industry, like we have a really hard time attracting significant capital to make really big leaps in technology. So you think about like Moore's Law, those who are familiar with like semiconductors, like we're so early in the scatter plot in financial advice technology, like wealth technology, that like, when I think about like, 20-ish years ago when I got into space, like for the most part, advisors charge the same fees they did 20 years ago. Services have expanded, I don't know, maybe the order of magnitude of like 40, 50% or something like that. And if we look at like real technological innovation that compounds, it's a bit more of like a neurological level. I mean, it's like 100 to 1,000 times like more efficient, right? And we still are like taking these very small, they're incremental, but they're still very small steps. And so I really do hope and see a future where there's a really, really like amazing, huge leap. And I think when that happens, advisors will serve like 10 times as many people as they do today. They'll do like way better work. Like it'll be a very, very measurable amount of alpha that they create because it'll be to the point where it's like actually measured, like and it's very automated. And then as a result of those 2 things, then you have tens of millions of people who could never get access to an advisor will now have access to them, right? But like we have a long, long ways, and we can't solve that with like more people, like middle office solutions and like more complexity that doesn't tightly integrate. So still optimistic though.
Yeah. And are there other disruptors, I guess technology aside, I know you mentioned service expansion, Dave, that financial advisors can think about when trying to keep pace with this changing industry? Would you like to start?
Sure. So I'll come back to service expansion, and I went through the list of services we provide. I mean, that's the way you touched on. Fees have been constant, but service expansion is not. When I joined the industry, 25 years ago, it was really picking investments was enough, right? And then picking investments and doing some planning was enough. And now I think we're well beyond all of that. So I'm certainly not an advocate that the role of the advisor is going away. I'm more of an advocate that the role of the advisor needs to evolve and change, both by becoming more human, but also being able to offer more to that client. And you come back to what Penny kicked us off with. Clients are really struggling with pulling together all the different puzzle pieces of their financial lives, from taxes to trusts to investments to planning. And I think the consumer doesn't really understand what financial planning is, right? They'll look at you with that dog tilted head sideways look when you look about it. But what it should mean is helping pull all those puzzle pieces together. So that leads to service expansion, which then leads to much more specialization. But then to pull off specialization, obviously we have a tilted point of view at our scale, but that's what really requires scale. Right? It's not to negotiate better fees with asset managers or custodians. What really requires scale is how can you have a dedicated expertise in a subject matter area that's relevant to your client. Because the generalist model works at the point of sale with the client, but doesn't work when you are trying to get to sophisticated advice. So you look at the medical profession as sort of a decent analogy where there's a lot of specialization, and that role of the advisor being more human is kind of at the front and being able to sort of figure out when is the specialist needed in the case. I think that's a really big deal because what we've lived through in the last 3 years, what consumers are really worried about goes well beyond the realm of investments or even foundational financial planning. It's pretty complex.
Got it. Penny, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, your question was on 2 differentiators. So I'll say I'll agree here on specialization. There we go. Keep in mind the consumer, the end client is being forced essentially now to make a choice between lowest cost or highest value. And that's not dissimilar from what's happening in other industries. I always use the travel industry as an example. It's cheaptickets.com to get your flights, or you hire a travel concierge to book your flights and create an experience and curate, an exciting trip for you. It's the same in our business as well. And so advisors that want to differentiate, because believe it or not, there's still a lot of advisors doing the lowest cost, just offering investment management or just selling insurance. So advisors that want to differentiate still have the opportunity to do so by showing highest value. And simply that means getting deeper within the vertical that you're serving. If you're serving business owner clients, for example, yes, you're doing investment management, you're doing financial planning, you're doing OCFO services for them, you're bringing in a practice management specialist to help them think about how to run their business more efficiently and engage their employees. I mean, think of the client events you can do if you were helping business owners just run their businesses better. So this is thinking above and beyond just what we typically think of as wealth management. So that's a differentiator in and of itself. The other differentiator I've seen, and one that I think the industry needs to keep an eye on, is advisors that are able to create community and curate community within their businesses. I use the example of, the GameStop and YOLO stock drama of, last year. That was an interesting scenario, not because people, pumped up a stock and made money or lost money. It was interesting because it proved to us what technology can do when people are stuck at home, feeling isolated, and feeling then connected to other people who are part of the same cause as them, right? So it was people literally on Wall Street bets, on Reddit. Sometimes when I mention Reddit, advisors don't even know what Reddit is. 11 million users on that Reddit thread, all talking to each other, hyping each other up, and making one another feel like they're part of something bigger. It's a really important commentary on where we are as a society now, and it's something that advisors need to be thinking about as it relates to being relevant, attracting next gen, keeping people loyal to their organization, connecting clients and prospects that have similar interests, that have similar passions about a specific cause or impact work together in an organization. They can use technology to do that, but creating community, I think, is going to be a differentiator for advisors as well.
Great. Would you like to weigh in at all, Jason?
I think it's super well said. I think the one thing I'd say is a real key kind of, because these are actually very different things, specialization and like community at scale. I'd say that like specialization probably works if you serve a lot of rich people, but it's gonna be hard to build like a big community of rich people. Whereas like you can build a big community of like-minded people. I think that kind of tribe mentality works. But I think that like therein lies like this sort of like advisors should probably make a choice Because if you're going to do like tons of highly specialized services, right, super deep relationships, that's a very different business than someone who says, hey, I want to go serve at scale like a large group of like subreddit users or something like that, which I don't think anyone here is necessarily trying to do, but therein lies, again, like hyper different in terms of like how you go about business and also even the value prop that you offer. And we can see that with even like you look at like our sponsors here. We can see like there's a tower here for Vanguard. Look, their first step of their flywheel is cost. Have the lowest 10% cost, highest 10% performance. They believe cost and results are actually, intrinsically linked. So. But that's at scale, not hyper services deep, right? That's at scale, serving the masses with like a bogle head, right? Like you literally created a massive community around something that can scale. But again, I think everybody has to decide what they want to do, and then you pick that lane and then get like really, really good at it.
I think that's a good ad. The really getting focused on who you serve and serve best, right? Rather than taking what I said and trying to apply it everywhere, right? Is the balance between that. I don't know how to put words, but it's a good point.
And you touched on this a little bit. I want to talk about inclusion in financial services industry. There's been a big push recently for us, the financial services industry, to serve people who have traditionally been left out of financial services. What is your advice for advisors who are looking to do that now and still grow their business in the way that they have been? Would any of you like to start?
I mean, I'll take a stab at it, but I'll also like qualify by saying like I'm a 40-year-old white guy, so I'm probably the least qualified person to really give lots of advice.
I'm a 50-year-old white guy.
All right, so
you're both disqualified.
Yeah, we're disqualified.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I'll say observationally, one thing that I've noticed, I think it's actually a really beautiful thing happening in this industry. It's probably one of I think the best like brightest spots in our industry is that there is this whole new generation of advisors that are starting their own businesses, and they're serving like very bespoke groups of people. And so there's end clients that are getting access to really good advisors that they never had access to 20 years ago. And I think a lot of it's actually because this sort of like entrepreneurial mindset. There's just so many people that are going out and they're launching their own businesses with like, I'm sorry, Ricky, but I just have right in my purview, but like advisor here who just focuses on travel and like really, young people who want to travel the world and spend their time. Like, that didn't happen. 20 years ago, you get a job at like Merrill Lynch, and it's like, give me a list of 100 rich people you know. That was not fostering any type of inclusivity. And so I'm just inspired by, the advice community, the advisors, especially those who are just going, look, I'm gonna serve a group of clients that the industry would not have allowed probably. Like I wouldn't have been able to get a job 20, 30 years ago. And now you can just plant a flag, start a business, and you can go serve whoever you want. The more we can do that, I think entrepreneurship will actually solve a lot of these, sort of inaccessibility problems. But if, when I got in the industry, it was all about serving super rich people in small numbers. That's not inclusive, right? So I think the polar opposite of that's probably a good result that we can, shoot for.
Yeah, this question gets asked a lot, and the answer is pretty obvious and simple. And we're seeing it happen, and I don't know if the pandemic accelerated that, but advisors and people in our industry have to be comfortable, and I think we're at a place now where we are comfortable defining success for ourselves and our individual businesses. I mean, we are in an industry that's quantitatively driven. We rank advisors based on AUM, based on average household they serve. You look at any industry publication and it talks about, private equity money and deals and billions and who hit the billion. That is the antithesis of, in some ways, focus, and maybe that's controversial, but the question and the solution to the question. And so I think advisors have given permission to themselves to define success for themselves, their team, their families, and their clients. And I'd like to see more of that in this business. The other thing is advisors, and the most successful advisors that I've met in this business have one thing in common. They are comfortable changing and evolving. They come into the office every day with no preconceived notion about what's going to work today versus what worked yesterday. So getting comfortable offering different services structured in a different way, getting comfortable charging subscription fees, ranking your success at the end of year slightly differently, maybe not focused as much on AUM, but focused more on client success and client fulfillment and happiness. More of that structure is what's going to get us to the ability to offer more access. The other thing I'd say is, advisors, if they want to do this and be part of the solution in our business, you have to scale your business. You have to hire people. It's the reason why our industry is consolidating, is because it's really difficult to do this as a solopreneur advisor, grow, be efficient, and also provide access to groups that otherwise haven't had access. So being willing to do things differently than perhaps you imagined yourself doing at this stage, is step one.
Great. Dave, what about you?
Well, we started off with a little quip of, are we qualified, right? And the examination that I've personally done over the last 3 years is, well, maybe I'm not qualified, but I am responsible, I am accountable, and I am necessary to help drive any kind of change because of the position that I hold and the influence and power that comes with that. And the other part of that personal examination is getting comfortable with not knowing exactly what to do next. And I think the examination that we've gone through is it's really about empowering the people that are already in our organization, that have the drive, the passion, the ideas, the compassion to be able to drive real change. And that's what we're trying to do from all aspects. Another manifestation of that, when you come back to particularly the word inclusion itself versus broader concepts that we just learned about in the session this morning, the fact of inclusion is trying to have a what I call a big tent, right? So as a wealth management firm, usually you're focused on rich people, right? So, but trying to take every level of service that we provide and push it to provide broad access to clients who would not normally have access to that for somewhere else. And at some level, it goes to, as financial planners and having close to 500 CFPs in the organization, some of that is pro bono financial planning and allowing the professionals in our organization do that work in ways that is consistent with their ideology, but being able to provide them the space and alleviating some of the pressure of their day-to-day responsibilities so they can have that impact in their communities another way. But I think it's also this continual learning, right? I don't have all the answers, and just being comfortable. While you might be leading a firm, you might not have all the answers to be able to continue to advocate and be a part of change.
Got it. Great, thank you. I want to jump to audience questions, so feel free to ask any questions via Slido. The first one we have: what scares you the most for your business? What keeps you up at night? Would any of you like to start?
I mean, I've got nothing. So
Oh yeah, never
I sleep
scared.
like a baby.
What scares me about, oh God, everything. We launched the business in January of 2021. We've expanded quite a bit over the last 2 years, not even. We went from 4 to, I think we're 22 now, almost 3 offices, almost $3 billion in assets. Growth is scary. What scares me most about the business itself is that when you go to conferences like this, you hear I'm a former consultant, career-long consultant in the industry, so I can speak firsthand. The way we talk to each other is not the way the consumer, the client, wants to hear information. Sometimes what scares me is that when we're talking about fintech and we're talking about advancements in our business, we miss the fact that a lot of this doesn't trickle down to the end client. Sometimes it doesn't even trickle down to the individual advisor who's, grinding day in and day out trying to serve the client. And so, we talk a lot in theoretical, but one thing that I'm always cognizant of, I don't know if it keeps me up at night necessarily, but one thing that I'm always cognizant of is, are we speaking to the client the way they want to be spoken to? Terms like holistic wealth management services and, artificial intelligence, these things don't mean anything to the average, American family trying to figure out if they're okay. And so, that translation of our language to theirs is something that I'm always thinking about. What scares me or keeps me up at night is, it's difficult to build these businesses. And I'm not an advisor. I'm, in leadership, if you will. I don't know how advisors manage the operating of the business, keeping up to date on fintech, pricing, and also advising clients. And so doing this efficiently so that advisors can have more time with clients is, is probably what keeps me up at night the most. And the other thing is just getting technology to talk to one another. If there's one thing that aggravates me, so it keeps me up at night, not because I'm scared, because I'm pissed off, it's technology and getting it to work efficiently for our advisors.
Would either of you like to weigh in? Yeah.
I'd say just, we talk about change, we talk about evolution. I think we are in a period of time where there's a sort of a golden age, but we need to evolve and adapt. So, that paid to be paranoid is like, are we evolving and adapting fast enough? You touched on a version of this a little bit earlier, like as an industry, as a profession, as a firm, nobody wants to be the BlackBerry of the industry, right? Once the standard and market leader, but then very quickly becomes irrelevant, right? So I think that's really important. I think a second thing is Penny touched on the consumer, which is good to be grounded in. It's still a category and an industry that the consumer fundamentally has massive distrust.
That's right.
And I wrestle with that a lot. It's probably my least favorite thing, but also the thing that keeps drawing me back to this industry is how do we change that? How do we really self-examine why there's so much mistrust? Whether you're at a cocktail party, I was at a business school reunion this weekend and talking to people, and it's like people take a step back when you even talk about what you do, and it's like I'm worried about that, right? How do we really self-examine and not just sort of say, well, we're better because we're independent RIAs or fiduciaries. You just really have to say, well, I'm part of the puzzle. So how do we examine that? I think that's...
First of all, I miss my BlackBerry, so I just want to say that. You're right, and it's the history of our business. It's why there is mistrust. I mean, we started as a sales industry. We sold or transacted with people for a commission, and and that was sort of it. And so even when we talk about, first of all, being a fiduciary, I heard somebody say this on a panel last week, is no longer really a differentiator either. But the end client doesn't know the difference. They don't know that we've evolved from a suitability standard to a fiduciary standard. They don't know the difference between wealth management and investment management. Those terms have become synonymous in our business because everybody calls themselves a wealth manager or financial planner. So to your point, the responsibility really is on us to educate the client in a way that's makes sense to them and isn't pushy about how the industry has evolved and why we're different. But it's dicey because you don't want to go on a soapbox at a business school reunion about the fiduciary standard and how
nobody wants to hear it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Well, I want to jump to another audience question. What's the future of advisory compensation models?
I'll jump in just because I had nothing on the last one, right? But so I have actually some I'd say like both strong opinions and lots of access to data. We support around 1,500 independent financial advisors, and they have all sorts of different fee models, right? And I think that there's the debates about it to me are actually like just completely ridiculous. It's like the reality is like there should be lots of choices in compensation. I think it should be fee only, is my opinion. So there's less conflicts of interest, but like that's very broad now. It could be subscriptions, it could be flat fees, it could be hourly fees, it could be AUM fees, right? Whatever they are going to be. But the reason why I think it's important that there's choices is that like for those who think it should be all subscription or flat fee, kind of like just check yourself for a minute. I grew up in a super rural area where nobody had any money. And if someone came to me and was like, hey, listen, for an affordable flat fee of $500 a month, I'll be like, fuck, I ain't got $500 a month, man. Like, I don't have, it's like, so that's ridiculous. Like, you're going to price out 99% of the world because they don't have enough to pay your flat subscription fee, right? So I think that's a really bad argument. I think that AUM, assuming 1% lasts forever, that's like you're living in a dreamland if you think that's the future. It's not going to be like that. Because again, there's going to be certain people who that's just going to be way too much money. And so I think that, having transparency, having it be less conflict of interest, having lots of optionality is a good thing for end clients. And it's okay for advisors. Like that is something that can be unique. And it's partly like when you choose to serve a certain type of client, I think if someone says, look, I'm going to be a flat fee retainer, it's going to be $20,000 or whatever, and I only work with people with $10 million, you're probably providing a ton of value, right? Like that's a great deal. If you're going to try to charge 20,000 and someone's only got 10, like you're not going to have any clients, you know? So I think there has to be, if we want inclusivity, which we need to have, our own tax system is a great example of this, right? I live here in California, so you're all welcome, right? I'm helping pay for this lovely beach we're on. But I can tell you that, you know, like the entire country works the same way. There's a very small percentage of people that are making the roads available to everybody and the schools accessible to everybody and beaches accessible to everybody. Like the same is somewhat true in wealth management, where, you know, those who get real shitty on like AUM fees. Look, AUM fees, they make the entire industry more accessible. Like without them, with some people paying more than others, you're not going to be able to serve all clients. So long-winded soapbox kind of answer, but I do think that there's not a right answer, because if there was only one way, we're going to exclude some big, huge swath of people, and that'd be a really bad thing for our industry.
Yeah, and I'll just say I don't think we're going to see the end of the, you know, AUM model or fee structure. You know, it's the same as when everybody was saying robos would replace advisors. You know, it's not going to happen. But what I think we will see is a lot of optionality, and what I think we need to see is advisors, similar to how we have an experience with any service provider, like if it's a, you know, Netflix or whoever, you get choices, and you could see yourself like these almost like client personas, you know, graduate to different levels, and you understand theoretically that, you know, you're paying this for this type of service, and then as you need more or, you know, want more from the service provider, you're going to pay a little bit more for extra stuff. And I think we have to start thinking about that, especially because of the great wealth transfer and the need for advisors to retain and really serve across multiple generations. For the individual advisors, start to think about the client personas that you will be serving. And I think you should, you know, display it on your website and your, you know, marketing material. We serve multiple clients across, across the life journey. This is what we charge at this stage. This is how we charge and why. And over time, you can graduate into different levels. So more of that, which you're seeing in other industries as well.
Yeah, I'll be additive because those are great comments. I think we have to examine the word compensation and then maybe separate two different concepts, which is how does the consumer pay for the services, and then how is the advisor or people they're working with compensated, right? So the industry evolves on variations of the payout grid, which I think is complete crap and an atrocity. It's a feudalistic system where somebody somewhere is lording over teams and holding on to 40% or 35%. That's a model that's advisor-centric, not consumer-centric, and the advisors may be very capable, but I think that model's fundamentally broken. So I'll be really clear on that, but it takes a long time for that to work itself out. But then you talk about advisory fees. I do think the AUM fee structure, if you were to examine it now, when we were to start this industry from scratch, you probably wouldn't set it up that way. You might set it up as some blend of there's an AUM fee and there's some kind of retainer fee based on services. It makes a lot more sense. But the reason why there's a long tail on it, I think, is actually because of the consumer. The consumer doesn't understand that. If you put that in front of the consumer, they don't know how to evaluate you against other things that they're looking at. So I don't know when the tipping point on that comes. I think it'd be good. I think it'd be healthy, but it's difficult, even though it makes complete sense. If you're starting as a de novo, maybe you can do that and pull it off, but it's I think the AUM fee will go away eventually, but has a long tail on it.
Got it. I think we have time for one more question. Nope, maybe not. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I think that was really helpful, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.